Okay, so it's been quite some time since I've done any kind of Q&A sort of video on my channel, and so I figured this might be a fun way to kind of round out the year. I asked you guys on Instagram, on Twitter, and on my Green Room forum to send in some questions, and boy, did you. There's quite a few responses on here, and actually some really good questions that I'm pretty excited to get to. So for the end of 2020, we're going to bring back Tuesday Q&A, and depending on how you guys like this, I might make it a more regular thing in the future. Now, before we get started, a quick plug. Today's video is sponsored by my new video course, the Complete Nashville Number System course. I just put this out last week, and this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. It is a 2-hour-long video course dedicated to teaching you everything that you need to know about the Nashville number system or the number system in general. No matter your skill level or experience or knowledge of music theory, this course is designed to get you up to speed on using the number system in real life, which to me, I think is really important. It's the one piece of musical knowledge that I use every single time I play music with other human beings. I really can't stress its importance enough, which is why I made a video course about it. You can check it out in the description box down below, as well as all the other links to support this channel. And also, because there were so many questions from you guys, I'm going to be doing a live stream over on my second channel, Rhett Shull Studio, where I take on a lot of these other questions that came in on Instagram and Twitter. You can find that linked down below as well. So with all that out of the way, let's jump into the first question. It came in on Instagram from some guy named Paul David's Guitar. If money wasn't an issue, what rig would you play? 1 guitar, 3 pedals, and 1 amp. It's a good question. I think I'll show you. So if money really is no issue, start with the guitar. It would be an ES335, but it would probably be a 1959 to 1961 vintage real deal 335. Actually, if I had to pick a specific one, I'd probably take Tom Bukovacs. Now the amp is actually pretty tough because it's such an important part of the sound. It arguably is the sound. 335s are so versatile, they can do just about anything, but the amp is crucial. And I'm a bit torn between something small and usable, like a Tweed Deluxe, for example, versus something that my guitar heroes played, the big stuff. And I think I have to say, if I was going to use one thing for the rest of my life, it would probably be a 100-watt Marshall Plexi, probably something from 68, 100-watt super lead with 2 matching 412s, gotta have the full stack, basket weave cabinets with the Greenback 25s, the original Greenback 25s in there. I think that amp paired with this guitar would cover just about everything I needed to do. Now the pedals. Now, since I'm going with an amp like the Plexi, the first thing I have to have is a fuzz. Now, I've been thinking about this actually probably too much. This is just a Q&A video, but I've actually put some serious thought into this. My initial reaction was to go to something like a tone bender, like a Mark I tone bender, but I actually think I would go with an octave fuzz, specifically my Jex Telez Jex Fox fuzz. I'm a huge octave fuzz guy. It's one of my favorite effects, and the more I use it, I think the more it's becoming a big part of my sound moving forward. I don't have that pedal here currently because I'm having a new pedal board built, and I sent that and a bunch of other stuff off in a box a couple weeks ago and hoping to have it back pretty soon. Now after the fuzz, I'm going to want some kind of modulation, and you can probably sense a theme here. I like the old school sounds, so I'm going to go with a Univibe. Now, this is the JHS Unicorn V2. I really like this vibe. It's pedal board friendly, but this probably isn't the vibe I would use. I would use my Tinsley Audio Sir Henry vibe. Now, like my Jex Telez, that got sent off for the new pedal board build, which you will be seeing on this channel relatively soon. So the Unicorn is acting in its stead right now. And then last, but certainly not least, my Multivox Multi-Echo. This is probably my favorite piece of gear that I purchased this year. It is an old school analog tape echo with crazy good sounding spring reverb tank in it. I bought this after seeing Josh Scott's video on tape echo. This thing is amazing. And like the Octave Fuzz, this has become kind of an integral part of my sound over the last year. So I think that guitar, those 3 pedals with that amp setup would be kind of the end all be all for me. Next up, we've got David SJ over on the Green Room forum, and David asks, am I still using 9-gauge strings? And the answer is yeah, pretty much across the board, all my guitars are running 9s on them, with the exception of my Novo Ceres J. For whatever reason, the Jazzmaster style bridge that's on that guitar and tremolo system, it does not like 9s. It would not stay in tune, especially the high E string. If I bent anything over a half-step bend, it just completely lost all tuning. I think it has something to do with the shallow breakover angle on the bridge with that Jazzmaster setup. So not the fault of mastery or anything like that. I think it's just inherent in the design. It doesn't like 9-gauge strings. And come to find out that Dennis Fano, the man who built that guitar, agrees that pretty much all Ceres Js that Nova builds come shipped with 10 to 46 on there for a reason. So this next question came in over on Twitter from Mike at my1980jugs. Mike asks, how do you reduce drum bleed into vocal/guitar mics when recording live in the same room? Thanks. This is a good question because this is actually something that we worked really, really hard to fix when we started the Backstage live show about 6 months ago. And we actually got it dialed in pretty well in the live room over here. Let me show you. This is Chad's kit over here. One of the first things we did was put up some acoustic paneling on the back wall to help absorb as much of that energy coming off the drums as possible and prevent it from reflecting off the back wall. It's not doing a perfect job, but it helped. The biggest thing that we did though was buy a set of these. These are clear sound baffles. I found them online and I know some drummer friends of mine that use these live, and they're essentially just plexiglass shields that go in between the cymbals, Chad's 2 snare drums, and our vocal mics. Now, the issue really came from Jamie's vocal because we're using a lot of effects on his vocal sound. There's a lot of distortion, a lot of compression, a lot of slapback, delay, and reverb, and so we were getting so much bleed from the drums that it was actually completely changing the drum sound whenever we would turn Jamie's vocal mic on. So we added another clear sound baffle here to add another layer of protection, and then we actually switched vocal mics. Now, all of our mics in here we're using for the live show are from Earthworks Audio. They're a sponsor of the live show. They provided all the mics that we use for free, so thank you to them for that. And we switched to these. These are the SR40Vs. The reason we're using these is because they have a super tight polar pattern. They do a really good job of rejecting everything that is not directly on axis with this microphone. It's a hypercardioid pattern, and that made the biggest difference combined with those baffles. It really helped us get the mix right before our first show. This question comes in from Joshua Heath Scott on Instagram. Joshua asks, Tube Screamer or Rat? For me, it would probably have to be a Rat. Not a huge Tube Screamer fan. I don't really like the mid-focused kind of thing that the Tube Screamer does. And I like the way a Rat breaks up. It's pretty gainy and distorted. But that being said, I only currently have one Rat pedal, the Jam Pedals Rattler. But I feel like I need to have an actual Rat. They're not crazy expensive, and it's just sort of one of those staple pedals that I feel like most guitar players should have around. So this next question came in on Twitter from Ben Dunnett, who I think has a really solid handle here, at WhoDoneIt4. Well done. I like that. Good use of your name. It's kind of a pun. It's quick. It's easy. Ben asks, what is one instrument that you would love to learn to play that you don't currently? Was there a specific song or performance that created that desire? Piano. I have never really practiced or learned how to play piano at all, and I feel like I have really missed out because of it. Every great producer that I know is also a great pianist or keyboard player, and it's something that I feel like would really help me out, not just in production stuff, but as a guitar player too. It is something I think I'm going to try and start working on. I can play one song on piano. That's it. That's all I know. At Daniel Marshall _music on Instagram wants to know, what's the one pedal on your board you couldn't do without, excluding tuners? Probably a delay pedal. Now, in my opinion, delay is one of the most useful and versatile effects that any guitar player can have on their pedal board. Now, I made a video about this a few years ago, actually. It's one of my early videos here on YouTube. I'll have it linked down below. But there's a few different ways to utilize a delay pedal as sort of a utility effect. One of the first ways I like to use it is as a way to fatten up a rhythm part, like that Gilmore thing that I was just playing, the Run Like Hell riff. So here I've got the delay pedal turned off. This is a Maxon 80999, by the way. This is an old school analog delay from Japan. A subscriber actually gave this to me, which is super cool. It's one of my favorite analog delays ever. But here it is without any delay. And if I turn the delay on, you'll hear it really adds another layer of depth to the sound. Now, another cool thing to do with delay is to use it with a really, really short repeat time, almost like a slapback, but even faster, and you can sort of simulate like a very granular room reverb sound. So let me show you what I mean here. This is with the delay time on this Maxon turned really, really far down, so it's a super fast repeat. And it has almost like a spring reverb-esque quality, especially if I bring the repeats up right to the point of oscillation. Now, it's definitely not going to fool anybody into thinking that's a super clean spring reverb tank, but it is an interesting effect. And the last example we'll do here is as a way to just fatten up and add some ambience to simple chords, for example. So I'm going to turn the delay time and the repeat way up and the delay level up and play some nice, pretty chords. And this one came in from Jeremy the Guitar Hunter. He asks, how do you deal with insecurities and which ones have you dealt with best? Well, to be honest with you, I have a lot of insecurities, especially around music and around being on YouTube. And the reality is I haven't really figured out how to deal with them. They still sort of persist. And the bigger this YouTube channel gets and everything associated with it, a lot of those insecurities get worse and worse. Insecurities around my playing, insecurities around people listening to what I have to say and what I say and how I say them. The imposter syndrome is very, very real over here at the YouTube channel. With that said, though, I think there are a few things that I used to struggle with that I have kind of gotten used to or overcome over time. One of them is just confidence in my playing. I go back to videos of me playing on stage 8 or 9 years ago, and my body language was just completely different. I was tense. I wouldn't move around. I would never look up from my pedal board or my guitar. And I don't know, I guess over years of just doing it over and over and over again and playing big stages and small stages in front of thousands of people and in front of no one, I kind of just let go. And I found that when I became more comfortable in my skin on stage, my playing got exponentially better. Max_Irvin22 over on Instagram asks, do you think having a wet dry amp setup is worth it for live gigging? Now look, I'm going to go against my friends Dan and Mick over at That Pedal Show on this answer. I love those guys. I have the utmost respect for them and their opinions. I, however, don't think a wet dry rig or even a stereo rig is worth it in most live gigging situations, at least the gigs that I do. And I speak on this from experience. There was a time earlier on in my time playing with Noah that I was actually bringing 2 amps to a gig, and I was experimenting with like a stereo setup and trying to do a wet dry setup. And I just found that for me, it was way more trouble than it was worth. Someone who's loading their own gear in and out of every rehearsal and every gig and playing a lot of smaller clubs where, you know, you don't have that much room on stage, where you have to be conscious of stage volume. Now, there is something to be said for playing on stage and really, really feeling the tone and feeling the sound that you're getting from your amp and having that inform your sort of confidence in your experience on stage. I know that when I like the way I sound, I play better. And for you, if that means having a wet, dry rig on stage with you, then by all means. Also on the Green Room forum, Mr. Jim DG asks, am I still planning a caged system video course? And the answer is yes. I've got a few courses planned for 2021, and that is one of them. At the Samuel X over on Instagram wants to know, what pedals or equipment do you use for your bass recording? This one I'm actually pretty excited to show you because over the last couple of months, I think I've honed in on a really great bass setup. So let me show you. So over the years, I've used a couple of different bass recording setups. Mostly in the past, I was using the Kemper for everything. You get a really good bass profile on the Kemper, and it's amazing for tracking bass. But more recently, I've switched to using Universal Audio and going DI for everything. Now, UA is a sponsor of the channel and of my live show, Backstage Live. So take my words with a grain of salt if you like. But I do really like the results I'm getting using the UA gear. So starting with the bass, this is my 2015 Fender American Standard P bass, just a straight ahead P bass. I've never changed the strings on it. They are 5+ years old at this point. I might end up swapping the pickup at some point, but it's fine for now. So from the bass, I'm going straight into the high Z input number 1 on the Apollo X4 here on my desk, and then I'm using this signal chain in console and Luna. I found with experimentation that I tend to like the Ampeg SVT-R, and I like to push the amp model a little bit because a lot of the bass sounds I go for, I want to hear a lot of the articulation coming from the strings, whether or not I'm playing with fingers or with a pick. Then out of the SVT, I'm going into the Neve 1073, and there's a preset in here that I really like from Dave Isaac called the 70s bass preset. And from there, I'm going into the Fairchild 670 compressor, which is just giving me a pretty even amount of compression, and it all sounds like this. But that's not all of it. In Luna, which I use to record, I'm also going through a bass bus over here on the left. So I'm going through a Neve summing channel, and then I'm using some tape emulation from the Ampex ATR 102 plugin. There's a preset in here called Vintage Analog Warmth. And then I'm evening everything out with the SSL G bus compressor, and there is a preset in here from Pat Carney that I really like called Thick But Plucky Bass. And that sort of helps push this sound closer to like the Black Keys, Danger Mouse, punchy, short scale bass kind of sound, especially when you're using a pick. Question came from BrandonSoriano.jpg over on Instagram. Brandon asks, what's been more valuable in your career, being versatile or being unique/distinct? That's an incredibly good question. For me, being versatile has been a key to success so far in terms of landing gigs and getting opportunities, but I think it's also worked against me, and I'll explain how. Before YouTube and before all this, everything that I did in terms of a professional guitar career was as a hired gun. I would get hired on a contract basis to go play with an artist, or to go record at a studio for an artist, or to play at a megachurch gig, or to teach guitar lessons. Everything was on a contract basis. And because of that, I learned pretty early on that I needed to be able to fill a lot of different shoes in a lot of different situations. I needed to be able to do, U2 style edge, ambient, ethereal sounds on a Sunday, and then show up at a bar gig on a Thursday night and play everything from Tom Petty to The Roots to Mariah Carey all over the course of 4 hours. And it worked. I was able to play with a lot of different people, and I got to play on some cool records and work in the studio. But it kept me from developing my own sound and my own feel. And I think long term, that has worked against me. When I think about the guys that I know that have landed the sort of career gigs, they've landed, gigs like playing with certain artists on the road, or playing on really great records, the stuff that I really wanted to do. When I think about it, all of those guys, all of those players had their own unique sound, and they got hired by those artists or by those producers because of their sound. Now, this definitely isn't always the case. I know a lot of musical chameleons that have landed really great gigs and opportunities over the years. And I think, you know, before COVID happened, it probably would have happened for me in a similar way too. But with that being said, you know, there's no right or wrong answer here. It kind of just depends on what are you looking to do. There's pros and cons to both sides. But yeah, for me, being versatile has been a key to being able to work in this industry. At Kerwood Band over on Twitter asks, tips for home music production that might not be obvious for live players. I really like this question a lot. Leave the live rig, meaning your live pedal board and your live amp. Don't use it for recording at home. And here's why. When I use my live setup to record with or to try and do a session with, I find myself sort of stuck in the same sounds that I typically go for and I typically use live. And that may not be what you're looking for when it comes to creating something new, either for your own music or working for somebody else. So what I like to do is kind of completely break apart my setup. I will use pedals that are not attached to a pedal board. I'll just kind of grab stuff off the wall and put different combinations of pedals together that I might not think of using on my live rig. Same thing with my amp. I will take an amp that I might use live and completely change the settings around from what I would use at a gig because I'm looking for a different sound. I think the overarching theme here is to do what you can to sort of break out of your live set mentality. And also, if you're a band and you're writing and producing stuff and you come up with a part or something and you're worried about, well, how would this sound live or how are we going to pull this out live? Don't think about that stuff. Get the song done, do what the song needs, and then figure out the live show later. But don't let the live performance and whether or not you can pull it off with your setup or with your gear inform what goes on the record, because I think that sort of limits what you can do. At Guitar Kate on Instagram wants to know, how can one acquire a Greek godly beard? If you find out, let me know. Maybe you meant to send that to Paul Davids instead. At Josh Warren 33 wants to know, when are you good enough to play live? Do you ever know if you are? Good question. I don't think there's really a threshold one has to meet when it comes to playing live for the first time. It's not like there's a entrance exam at your local venue that you have to pass in order to be allowed on stage. But I don't necessarily know that that's the right question to ask. I don't think I would look at it that way. What do I have to do in order to be good enough to go on stage? I think more importantly, it's when are you ready to go on stage? When will you feel confident enough to step on stage and start playing with someone? It may be a few months after you start playing, or it may be years. And for some people, they're never confident enough to go on stage. And you know what? That's totally fine. You don't have to pick up an instrument with the intention of going out to play live. The vast majority of musicians and guitar players, I imagine the vast majority of people that watch this channel have never and will never play live in front of people, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I think it's when you feel ready. So that's Tuesday Q&A. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget, I'm going to be answering a lot of these other questions down on my second channel. You can check that out down below. Don't forget to check out my new video course, the Complete Nashville Number System. And if you're interested in any of the gear that I use to make these videos or any of the gear that I talked about today, there will be some affiliate links down in the description box below. If you end up buying something through that link, I end up getting a small commission, which really helps me out in running this channel. So thank you very much. Be sure to subscribe here to my YouTube channel, follow me on Instagram at Rhett Shull, and check out my second channel, Rhett Shull Studio. I'm starting to get some new types of content going over there for 2021. So if you're interested, check it out. Anyways, hope you enjoyed today's video. My name is Rhett Shull. Remember, there is no plan B. And Happy New Year, everyone. See ya.